Welcome to the Superintendent's Hangout, where we discuss topics in education, charter schools, life in general, and not necessarily in that order. I'm your host, Dr. Sciarretta. Come on in and hang out. This episode is brought to you by McGriff Insurance Services and Senior Vice President Mike Lutosky. For over a century, McGriff has focused on building long-term relationships to deliver innovative insurance solutions. The McGriff name dates back to 1886 and the founding of McGriff, Sables, and Williams. Today, McGriff is part of Truist Insurance Holdings, Inc., one of the top 10 largest insurance brokers in the world. McGriff provides highly consultative risk management and insurance solutions for businesses of all sizes, as well as for personal insurance needs. Coverages available include commercial property and casualty, small business, employee benefits, management liability, personal lines, and much more. Mike Lutosky's expertise is wide-ranging and includes transitioning employers from fully insured to partially self-funded medical, dental, and vision programs, HRA wrap programs, reference-based pricing, healthcare pricing transparency, pharmacy consulting, wellness programs, marketing, implementation, and ongoing management of fully insured benefit plans, and much more. Mike can be reached on his cell phone at 619-925-1731. All proceeds from this sponsorship support the Eric C. Mitchell Scholarship Fund at Albert Einstein Academies. The scholarship benefits graduates who exemplify the outstanding human qualities that define Mr. Mitchell's legacy. For this episode, I sat down for a conversation with Mike Lutosky. Mike is currently Senior Vice President at McGriff Insurance Services, and he's located in San Diego, California. Mike's areas of expertise include transitioning employers from fully insured to partially self-funded medical, dental, and vision programs. And if that sounds just like a bunch of insurance industry gobbledygook, we unpack that in this conversation, and we talk about Mike's uniquely innovative approach and thinking about insurance. We cover topics like why do most people have $250 deductibles on their car insurance, even if they don't drive a lot, and how much money they're, in effect, throwing away on premiums. We talk about healthy living, lifestyle choices, and their impact on health insurance, health managed organizations, HMOs, the pharmaceutical companies, and much, much more. Mike is an avid reader, a historian. He was a history major in college, and he continues to love to read about history, and a world traveler. Trust me, this episode is not just about arcane facts about the insurance industry. This show is about life. I hope you enjoy listening as much as I did making this episode. Welcome, Mike. Welcome to the Superintendent's Hangout. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here, David.
I was wondering if you could start off by telling us about yourself, what your origin story is,
Sure.
Where you're from, who you are, what brings you to the present moment.
Yeah, well, it's going to take an hour.
We've got time.
Just introducing myself. Yeah, great question. Think about that a little bit. Origin story. Well, grew up in the Pacific Northwest. My dad was worked at Humboldt State in Arcata, California. So I always like to say about as far away from San Diego as you can be and still be in the state of California, right on the coast. And then I just migrated south. So went to college in Bay Area, Santa Rosa Junior College, and then St. Mary's, where I played tennis. So I was kind of like a
Is that the Gales?
The Gales.
The Gales.
Yeah, go Gales.
Go Gales.
Absolutely. And a total basketball junkie, and thought I'd play some basketball in college maybe, but I started playing tennis when I was about 14 or 15 and just kind of got better at it quicker. So kind of went down the tennis, kind of route and playing tournaments, and ended up playing in college and still play a ton today. And I guess that's how I ended up here in the meantime, graduated from college, did a bunch of traveling, a couple trips here and there around the world, and ended up meeting my beautiful wife in 1990. I was from Oklahoma, so I spend quite a bit of time out in Oklahoma these days, or have for the last 30 years. We're coming on our 30th anniversary, September 4th of this year. And that's kind of how
you got to get the date right.
Oh, I know the date.
I know
the date.
That's good.
It's in my ring. She had it engraved, so yeah. Even if I forget.
I'm not going to say if I just saw you check your ring or not.
No, it's there. It's there. Guaranteed, it's there. Yeah, and so tennis has been a huge part of my life, as well as surfing a little bit. A little better at tennis than surfing, but I love being in the ocean, so that's a huge part of my identity is just being active and being on tennis court and being in the ocean with people I like to be around.
I know in previous conversations we talked about travel, and you mentioned traveling in Mexico and flying out of the Tijuana airport.
Yeah.
And showing up there and just rolling the dice and choosing a destination with your daughter. Can you talk about that? I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. So we, my oldest, I was actually, funny you mentioned that. I was just, she's 26 now and just got married. But when she was about 17, 18, one thing that I just love and try and find in my life any way I can is spontaneity. When not knowing what the next step is, I just love being in that headspace. Probably comes from the traveling I did when I was on my own. I had some of the greatest, craziest experiences of my life when I just took a left when I thought I was going to take a right or plan to. So my daughter and I, Cassidy, we went to the airport with a backpack. Didn't have any idea where we were going to go. And I told her, I'm not making one decision. You're making every decision on this trip. So we just looked up at the board, and she picked Mexico. It was Mexico, Nashville, or somewhere overseas. It was all just, we could get the flight in the next couple hours.
Wow.
You just had to make a decision. And then from there, she found the hotel, and we started going. We found places. It was just a great adventure. I'm going to do it again. I literally was just talking about it last night with my youngest, Chloe, who's 18. It's about time for us to do it. So I'm just pumped to do it again.
So spontaneity and insurance
you had to bring that up.
Necessarily.
Yeah, these two things don't go together.
So I guess we all need the yin and yang in our lives.
Yeah.
So you and I were speaking prior to hitting the record button about the insurance industry, and not necessarily traditionally something that people would voluntarily want to listen to a podcast about, except that you've done some really innovative things, and we're going to ask you about that.
Not sexy.
It's not a sexy thing. It's not just choose something on a board. In fact, insurance companies don't like for us to be spontaneous.
No, they don't.
And so can you talk about what led you into the insurance sector and what you've done over your career, and how you and I got to know each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to go back a little bit because I think it connects for me in a big way. I graduated from St. Mary's College with a degree in history. Thought I was going to be a teacher and coach, but didn't really know for sure when I was, that month, 2 months out for graduation, when everybody's asking them, what are you going to do after graduation? So I was trying on, I would say, different hats at that point. I remember I was just making stuff up to tell my relatives and friends and other people, well, what are you going to do next year? I'd just make something up. So eventually because when you're a history major, you're just liberal arts and you can go into teaching, or maybe you track towards law school or something. But I had no specific desire to do either one of those. I had no real plan. And so I just kind of decided that I was going to start telling people I'm going to go traveling. And this all connects eventually. Yeah. So I'll bounce around a little bit, but to answer your question. But that's what I did. Crocodile Dundee. I'm dating myself, but that was, about late 80s when I was graduating.
Did you have the hat?
I didn't have the hat, but I did want to be I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing, right, which was, let's go to Europe and we'll backpack. Right. I just wanted to do something different. I've always wanted to take that path too, something a little, so maybe that kind of in a weird way, connects to, now that I think about it. So I decided Crocodile Dundee, shrimp on the Barbie, you know, I'm going to go Australia. I'm not going to do this Europe thing that was kind of the standard thing.
Eurail pass.
Eurail pass, you know. And so ended up going over there by myself, which scared the crap out of me. First time, you know, small town kid, you know, been anywhere really by myself.
Right.
Any significant. And I just had an unlimited ticket and $2,000 in my pocket that I saved and was going to stay as long as I could stay. And ended up getting over there. I remember for 2 weeks I didn't talk to anybody, which you might have gotten a sense. I'm kind of a talker. And I was just scared out of my mind. I just wanted to come home. I just wanted to spend all my money and come home. And I met this Irish guy at a bar, and he and I, the first guy I talked to, I'm talking pretty close to 2 weeks of not really having any conversations with anybody because I was just scared out of my mind. And I had a few people give me crap about being American, Yankee. You know, it wasn't all love of the Americans at that point.
Right.
And anyway, long story short, that kind of broke the ice for me. He and I hit it off, and I started just going and developed a habit of just talking to people and asking questions about them, which eventually, you know, bounced me around Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, and came back, worked for a while, wanted to go out again. So I did do Europe, you know, and then came back from Europe. And I funded the whole thing. I had less than no money. I had negative money, and I needed to get a job. I mean, I needed a real job, you know, college degree. Parents were kind of like, Mike, you know, and probably time. And a buddy of mine had gotten into the insurance business, and I just called him up and met him at Jose's in La Jolla for a lunch. I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt. He's in a suit. He and I are profiled kind of personality-wise, and hey, what do you do? What's this insurance thing? And that was it. He told me about it, and I said, well, maybe I'll go do that. And then I ended up getting a job with Cigna. And so I literally fell, what I would say, you know, just fell backwards into it. And then from there, as I kind of got into my career, I just found like there was lots of opportunity, even in something as, you know, kind of stale and boring as insurance, to be different and to be unique, which is what I think that's a thing I always gravitate towards, is I don't, you know, it's in a bit of a contrarian, don't necessarily, you know, Australia versus Europe. I kind of tend to want to take the, you know, the path less traveled maybe as a trait. So I just started going down this route of, you know, just exploring creative ways that, you know, different companies are trying to solve the same problem, which is, you know, kind of do something about the affordability of healthcare. And, you know, what we all know is, you know, an industry that is really struggling to provide, you know, quality, affordable, you know, products to people.
And it's one of the only areas of insurance where the expectation, although it's waning, but the expectation is that your employer should provide it for you.
Right. Yeah, obviously America's one of the only, if not the only, I think, country where employers are, you know, I could go into history of that, but it's not really that interesting. But, you know, versus countries like Finland and Canada and England, that, you know, there's a national insurance. It's funded by the government instead of private industry. But I also think at the same time, there's a lot of innovation and I met with a company this morning, which just was fascinating. And they're doing great things and, you know, trying to solve the problem of affordability and access. So I find that super interesting in a otherwise uninteresting business. Yeah.
What was the process like, jumping around a little bit, what was the process like with Obamacare, which probably should have been called Romney Care?
Yeah.
Which supposedly was going to be repealed and replaced.
Right.
Which that clearly didn't happen.
Did not happen.
Turbulence in the industry, trepidation on your part.
Absolutely.
And you know, I don't think we've really moved past Covered California is
it's
it's
here.
a thing. It helps a lot of people.
Yeah,
at least anecdotally, that's what I see.
Oh, I think it more than anecdotally. I think it's like helped millions. A huge problem we had in America with underinsured, uninsured, basically losing their houses. Because of some medical condition. So it's not perfect, but it's done a ton. And for me personally, trepidation being in the insurance industry. What does it mean? It was a significant, event in 2014, and there were a lot of people in the industry that thought it was the beginning of the end. And so far, that's almost 10 years later, it actually is working real well. Far from perfect, but and everybody's adapted, and we're still in California, helping those people with lower incomes that don't have access to insurance traditionally because of the cost. I mean, we're all helping fund that, which I think is a great thing. So I'm for it, and it's been good for my business too. So it's unintended consequences, right? You would think, oh, this is the beginning of the end. I'm an insurance guy. I'm in the healthcare employee benefits sector. The next step is, a national healthcare like Canada or something like that, or maybe Medicare for all is what it's termed as now. Well, really what happened is, as well as Covered California and the exchanges that offered individuals access to care, employers were required to cover and offer coverage to a whole set of employees that otherwise weren't eligible for benefits, mostly the low-paid people that were working under 40 hours a week. So all of those people are now being covered by the current system or have gravitated towards Covered California, depending on the cost. So far from perfect, but better than where we were 9-10 years ago. And I think there's more to come. I think, we're not talking about really within rational people, we're not talking about repealing it anymore. I think it's going to be continued to be refined as time goes by, and we'll see where we end up. But yeah, it's here to stay.
Some of the repealing voices are more focused on December 2023 court hearings in New York.
Sure.
So it's interesting how that'll divert your attention a little bit. Do you think it would have received better national acclaim had it not had the moniker of Obamacare attached to it? It'd be less polarizing. And
sure.
I mean, it's interesting. I saw this clip where I don't know if it was Jimmy Fallon or someone was asking people on the street, hey, what do you think of Obamacare? And they're like, I hate it. And then they said, what do you think about Covered California? And they go, oh man, it's
love
great.
That.
I love that. My wife only paid $50. She broke her leg, and it's like, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's it was politicized, right? Which that's not where it belongs, but that's the world we live in. So yeah, that's a good example of how if you explain to people what it is, they love it. Once they access it because they need to, they lost their job and they don't know where the next dollar's coming from, and they're able to go get insurance for free on Covered California. They love it. Doesn't matter what political party you belong to, what your belief system is. But then you call it Obamacare, and all of a sudden they don't like it. So that's the world we live in. I don't worry about that too much. Right. I think that's just kind of baked into our society, unfortunately. But it's here to stay, I think. And overall, I think it's been a great thing. I'm proud that. I never really thought about this before, but I am proud of America for doing it. And it's not going anywhere. I think it'll continue to be revised, and I think new technology will come into play. Some of the vendors, like the one I met with this morning, they'll continue to help, the cost end of things and access. And that's what America brings to the table is great innovation, over time. So.
I know Mark Cuban.
Cuban's a great example.
Is working on trying to burst the bubble around pharmaceuticals, and it seems to be that. And this is me. I'm not an expert. I'm a Google expert, but I followed Mark Cuban. I follow Mark Cuban because he's interesting in the way he thinks about problems. I don't always agree with him, but seems that there are very few entities in the United States that, just a handful, you could fit them in one room, that control the cost of pharmaceuticals, the over-the-counter cost that you pay when you go into the pharmacy. And he's trying to change that whole dynamic. And
absolutely.
I mean, maybe it takes someone as big and powerful and wealthy as he is, and with a bully pulpit to be able to change that. Is that what you're talking about when you say that there are technologies that
spot
are
on?
Absolutely,
ideas and technology. So Mark Cuban's a great example. I do a ton of pharmacy consulting, so I know. I always say this. I'm probably one of the most boring guys to run into at a cocktail party and ask, "Hey, what do you do?"
And then people go, "Hey, could I get some pharmaceuticals?"
I could just and I carry it in my pocket. Yeah. No, I could just kind of geek out on it, and I do find it very interesting, kind of back to maybe kind of this boring industry that I got into, but I find aspects of it super interesting and challenging. So go backwards a little bit to Obamacare. So that was a negotiation item. Was okay. Well, why is it that we aren't able? Why is it that across the border in Canada, the same drug costs a fraction of what it costs in America from the same manufacturer? And we're not talking about, a different drug from a different manufacturer. We're talking about the exact same prescription that you need. Well, there's a lot of reasons that it could get pretty political, so I'll stay away from it, but lobbying is one of those. So there was an opportunity within Obamacare let's open this up and allow employers and the government to purchase drugs in Canada. Why not? Well, lobbyists came in, and to a degree, and I'm not go too deep on that because I don't know everything that went on, but that's essentially what happened. There was a decision made not to allow that, but now Mark Cuban he's revived that, as others have, not just Mark Cuban, to bring more consumerism into more opportunities. Think of it like Amazon. I mean, do you really care where your barbecue cover that I just bought literally yesterday on Amazon comes from? And
it's already at your house?
Yeah. No. Well, why can't we just order the drug that our doctor prescribed? It's the same drug. Why can't we just go online? And now that's starting to loosen up, and that's what Cuban and others are all about.
Amazon's already venturing into that, right?
About it. Yeah. So what people don't understand about the pharmaceutical industry, which I find super interesting, is just once again geeking out on it, is it dwarfs the insurance industry. So the most recent example of that is CVS Caremark purchased Aetna. So CVS Caremark owns Aetna. That's one pharmaceutical. So the insurance industry is under the microscope a lot, as they should be, but the rate at which this big pharma spend is happening, and a lot of the drugs, we can go on and on about how great they are and necessary they are, and they prevent hospitalizations and all that, but at the same time, record profits, not a lot of common sense applied. You would just ask the Joe off the street, well, why can't you purchase the same drug 50 miles away across the border we do this down to Mexico. Sure. People just go down there and do it, right, without insurance, and it's cheaper than what they'd pay if they ran through their employer-based plan. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the innovation that's coming, and that's why there's so much opportunity, because guys like Mark Cuban and a lot of others are just exploiting and starting to solve that problem, surfacing it, and then saying, well, why can't we do this? And how do we go about doing it? And as what they do, as those innovations come in, the cost stabilizes, access improves, and I think there's reason to be somewhat optimistic about where we're going.
I know that in Mexico, for example, and this may be driven by the fact that many folks can't afford private insurance, and some people may have insurance through the government jobs, or some perhaps based on income. I don't totally understand the system, but every pharmacy has to have a physician there.
Yeah.
And so you'll go to a pharmacy and you're complaining about a sore throat, and the doctor can check you to see if you have a strep and can give you medication right there.
Right.
Even if it's, you're not part of a plan, you just pay out of pocket. There's a menu on the wall that says this is how much it consultation cost. This is how much. And it's an interesting thing. I know CVS has this Minute Clinic where you can roll in there and get certain vaccinations done and that sort of thing. And that wasn't the case 15, 20 years ago.
Well, on that point, look at what COVID, we all got exposed to this online, right? Doctor appointments through companies like Teladoc and others. Now it was like the utilization now was just in the toilet. I mean, everybody thought they should use it. Everybody wanted to provide it as a option to employees. I mean, clients, employers. Very little utilization. Now it's like
it's actually the default.
Everybody's doing it.
Yeah,
like, why do I drive into an appointment why don't I just do my app?
Right.
I've done it. Just pop up on my phone. Hey, I'm not feeling good. I think I need this. I think I have the flu.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, where's your pharmacy?
Yep.
Oh, we'll just send it in. I mean, literally, why would you take the time to set up an appointment, wait 3 weeks, and get the same prescription? So all those things, and that televisit knocks the cost of that visit down, I would at least half.
I'm sure.
But less than half. So for the same thing, so those are the opportunities like Mark Cuban with, the drugs in Canada and negotiation on pricing. And there's just so much opportunity. There's a big problem, but there's lots of opportunity.
I've heard talk of the fact that the U.S. is one of the few developed countries that allows big pharma to advertise.
Yeah.
I mean, and I got this.
Yeah, us in New Zealand.
I've got this Ozempic, whatever.
Yeah, it works.
It totally works.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even remember what it's for. I remember there are a lot of side effects that I don't want to hear about.
Right.
But it works, right? And I know there's a whole industry that's sprung up even around naming these medications.
Right.
Right? Because they're being advertised, they have to have a catchy kind of, it's got to be scientific enough that you think it's legitimate, but it's got to be catchy enough that you can remember it. Hey, ask your doctor about this. So why is it so few countries allow this type of access? I mean, we don't advertise, cigarettes on, obviously that causes damage to your health. But my point being that there are a lot of regulations about what can and can't be advertised. We're blasting this stuff out to the general population and then putting the onus on the consumer to go ask the doctor about something. Mm-hmm. But yet when I've tried to go and get a comprehensive physical as a middle-aged guy, and I go in and say, I'd love to run on a treadmill and I'd love to you do a full battery of tests. And they go, well, are you having any problems? I'm like, no, but I want to try to see around some corners in my life. Well, we don't really start with that. So the system is fragmented and broken and seems to be driven by financial interests. Can you talk a little bit about that? I don't want to put you in a spot where you're having to check under your hood when you leave here.
No, I love talking about it. I think it's undeniably true that there are perverse incentives in the system and that they need to be wrought out. The advertising, I do presentations on the pharma side and we'll actually put logos up on the just what you did, kind of, David. We'll put logos up on a slide, and we'll ask people like, "Well, what's this drug for?" And can you hum this? And people get it right.
Of course they do.
They get it right.
Yeah.
One of my standard kind of lines is, I'll say this to clients and potential clients. On the pharma side, is like, well, I'm not a big NASCAR guy, but if you watch NASCAR and you see that car going around in a circle at 250 miles an hour, or whatever the hell they go, and it's got a pharmaceutical company logo on it, that's a drug that's super expensive. Right. And probably has an alternative. So one story, it's not even it's a reality. It happened. Lipitor was, for us older guys, cholesterol. Right. So they were losing their patent, so they had their patent for a bunch of years. I forget, is that Pfizer? I forget who made Lipitor. Anyway.
So it's about to go down to about $5 a pill or whatever.
So I believe the per script cost for a 30-day supply was around $350 to $400.
Right.
And then with the generic, kind of manufacturer coming in, losing the patent, it was going to go down to somewhere around $50.
Right.
for the same drug.
Yeah, game changing, especially for folks on limited income.
Yeah, so I should know this off the top of my head, but let's just say it was Pfizer, maybe it's somebody else, whoever manufactured Lipitor. They literally wrote a check to the generic manufacturer, the company coming in, the first in on the generic side that was going to offer the same drug for $50. They wrote that company a check for $1.9 billion, Google this, to delay the release for 6 months. So that can tell you the dollars we're talking about that are in play. And if we could wring some
How is that legal?
I have no idea. It happened. Yeah, how is it legal? I don't know. But that is an example, and there's all kinds of examples of the opportunity. You know, if we can, like Cuban's trying to do, if we can get some common sense in, more consumerism, do something about this advertising that just works. I mean, it's like Mad Men. I mean, there's a reason that industry exists. They're tapping in between our ears to get us to do stuff that maybe we wouldn't otherwise do, just like big tobacco, just like the food industry, which is a huge problem that people kind of shuffle off to the side, which is, yeah, there's the manufacturers and the advertising and the drug companies, but there's also a reality that over a third of our country, of almost $400 million, are obese. And I look at pharmacy data all the time, and those diabetes drugs are always at the top of the list, and the spend on those drugs is enormous. Now, some people you can't do anything about, but a lot, it's lifestyle.
Right.
And there's a stat out there, I'm not going to quote the percentage, but it's the vast majority of the claims that run through, the cost that runs through the American system are a result of lifestyle. So there are things that we could do something about if, to your point earlier, we got on the treadmill, ate a little better, watched our sugar intake, obviously don't smoke, but you know, over a third of our country. And childhood obesity essentially didn't exist prior to 1980. I mean, think about your own 8th grade class. How many kids in that class you would say were overweight?
0.
Right. And now it's an epidemic. So there's a great documentary, if you haven't checked it out, called Fed Up. Katie Couric is I forget his name. Michael Hyman is the doc that she partnered up with. Now it's probably 10 years old, you know, and it just talks about the impact of the food industry and big sugar and how basically addictive a lot of these, you know, the food that we eat, and it's marketed to us all a Mad Men, and it once again, it works. And it's not just like big tobacco, big food. They know it's addictive. They know kids get addictive. Ask yourself this, why is there such a thing as a Happy Meal that you get a toy? You get a toy with a meal, and then you got all the figurines, and it's in like Disney comes in and collect all the figurines. So that means you got 10 Happy Meals you got to get to collect all it. So all of this kind of rounds out to the same, you know, kind of challenge, which is we're being influenced by big food, and that's a big part of the problem as well when you look at the whole healthcare, what we would call it a crisis, you know. So
you and I think we both share an admiration for Dr. Peter Attia.
Absolutely.
And I'm working my way through his book. He says it's the only book he's going to write, and I can see why it took him 15 years to write. But it's chock full of really interesting information, and he talks about the fact that although we speak of life expectancy really doubling over the last 100 years or so. So my grandfather was born in 1910, and he managed to live into his 80s. But had he been born in 1900 or the late 1800s, he's probably not making it past 45 or 50. Right. Really, he hit that sweet spot of antibiotics.
Yep.
And drastic reduction in infant mortality, which that obviously has a huge impact on the average for life expectancy. But if you take those out, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, those, it seems like cancer stayed fairly steady, but heart disease and diabetes have just skyrocketed.
Right.
So we're talking about when people say, I'm so glad I was born today because now I get to live into my 80s, at least statistically. It's like we still haven't made a dent in some of those other chronic diseases, and some of them are lifestyle related.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know. I mean, there's Fed Up, which is a great documentary that speaks to the food industry and the addictive nature of a lot of what they're marketing to us. But then I don't know if you followed the blue zones, but massive study that was done. Actually, there's a book written and a documentary on this as well. I think there are 30 blue zones across the world, where people live the longest, have the healthiest, kind of latter years to their life. Heart disease, little to no cancer, little to no obesity, and they're all places in the world like Okinawa.
Yeah.
There's actually San Bernardino. So it's not all these remote places.
Ironically, the home of the original McDonald's.
Really?
Yeah, Inland Empire.
Boy, there's a fun fact.
There's a fun fact.
So the Latter-day Saints that's a hub for them. Well, they're
obviously not going to McDonald's.
No, they're not going to McDonald's. They're not drinking Cokes. They're not.
No.
And they have this lifestyle that's in their community. That's an important part. So, but if you look at that community or Okinawa or the number one place where people live the longest is an island off the coast of Greece. It's can't pronounce the name of it. It starts with an X, but the point of it is they don't have fast food. Their lifestyle is at a much slower pace, so they don't have the stress. They're very much connected as a community, so they have that sense of being part of something bigger than themselves.
Right.
They're not isolated. Even though they're on an island, they're not isolated. They drink a little wine with lunch. They take a nap. Importantly, they get a lot of exercise as a natural part of their life. They're shepherds.
Probably walking a lot and hiking, right?
They're shepherding the herd. It's very rocky. They got to get them from one level to the next. And so you have multiple 80-year-olds that are shepherds. And they take a nap with the sheep and they move them to the next level. So it's all, and they literally have very little, if any, of the issues we have with, obesity, diabetes, cancer, alcoholism, all those things that we know are drivers in our society of, back to the problem, the accessibility and cost of healthcare. And just per Peter Attia, how do you live a healthier life into your latter years, where those last 15 to 20 years are productive and you're athletic and you're with it.
And you want the decline to be super short and super quick.
Right.
Not rounding third and you're already sliding into home plate.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I could go off of that. In America is one of, if not the top country that, as far as spending in the latter years of life. We tend to spend an enormous amount. If you look at what's spent, the overall cost of healthcare, which we know Americans spend more and have, get less out of it than a lot of countries. There are a lot of, 10 or 15 countries that are ahead of us when it comes to that measurement. We spend a ton of our, the money that's spent on providing health care to Americans in the last few months of life. It's just an inordinate amount of money that other countries with national systems don't spend. They just don't make those decisions to keep you on that machine that extends your life, even though you're not coherent and don't really know what's going on. But we allow that in America, or it happens. I shouldn't say we allow it. It happens in America largely because of there's no incentives or no reason not to allow it, because the employer, the government's going to pay for that 2 weeks on a ventilator. And it's a controversial thing to talk about. And if I was ever faced with that decision, God hope I don't, I'd probably make the same decision. Yeah, give me that 2 weeks. But that's part of the problem as well.
My daughter spent a semester in Costa Rica. And at the end of her semester, I went down and met up with her, and we traveled around. We had a great was kind of one of those once in a lifetime experiences. And in anticipation of my trip, I was doing some research on Costa Rica and was reading a New York Times article, I think it was the New York Times, about life expectancy in Costa Rica compared to the United States. And, Costa Rica is often referred to as the Switzerland of Central America. But it's a tiny country of 4 million people, tiny economy, no military, so that's cost savings, to say the least. But they have a really interesting system of a national blanket of healthcare home visitors. I can't remember what they are. It's essentially a cross between nurses and social workers, and they have a caseload, and they track these people for their whole lives, and then they hand off cases as those people retire. And so if you're someone and you're not going to your physical, they'll call you, then they'll email you, whatever it is, but then they'll come to your house.
Right.
And so it's interesting to me how many of these things could we avoid with early detection and nudging the ship really early in the journey so that we avoid metaphorical icebergs later on. It seems like so much of our stuff is just based on, hey, full steam ahead. You either do go to the doctor or you don't. It's the stereotypical men not going to the doctor, and then until either the wheels are falling off or you go in for a routine check and you find something that could have been avoided had you gone in earlier.
Yeah. Well, we have technology now. Actually, I have a good buddy who is leading a company in San Diego where you go in with genomes and everything, and they for $5 to $8,000 they do a battery of tests, look at your genetic makeup, and they can tell you with a high degree of accuracy kind of what you're looking at. What's coming at you. Is it cancer? Is it heart disease? Do you have some kind of tumor in you already? I mean, it's pretty amazing what can be done, but the cost is prohibitive.
Right.
But to your point, there is a lot that can be done with preventative if you just have the motivation, or the insurer, the government has a program to help you towards that to avoidance. Because it is, once again, back to the stat, vast majority of claims costs that flow through our system are related to lifestyle.
Right.
What we're eating, not exercising, smoking. Put a seatbelt on, that helps.
Right.
That's been proven. So there's a lot that can be done. But I think, we're also not Costa Rica. We got two borders.
Right.
We got people coming into the country, certainly in San Diego. We know this, coming into our hospitals, incurring expenses, having babies and the like, and then they're going back home. So I, for one, I'm okay with that as a part of our total expense. I wouldn't say don't do that, but you have to realize we're a country of 400 million, not 4 million.
Right.
We're not Finland. We're not homogeneous.
Right.
We got a lot of different people.
We don't all eat mackerel every day.
No, we're not big mackerel folks, right? Yeah. So yeah.
So, with all that being said, how do you find the space in the industry to innovate? And so, just to give the listeners a little background, you and I met because you have been supporting charter schools, and I know you have other clients besides charter schools, but we met through the charter school sector, and kind of an innovative approach that you have to going out to market to try to get health benefits for charters. Could you kind of talk about the journey into the self-funding, what that is, and how it's helped your clients, and perhaps why more people aren't doing it?
Yeah, so I guess how I kind of came to do what I do, which is really within, once again, the boring insurance industry. What I enjoy doing is helping clients, charter schools, and others, that need to find dollars to use in ways other than providing, insurance to employees. And and do good things with those dollars. That's why I love the charter school space, and so much is that the savings is used to retain teachers and programs that are vital to the students. So that makes me feel good. So I just, over the course of my 30-year career, noticed that there's a basic truism in insurance, and it applies to other areas of life, a lot of other areas. It's the 80-20 rule. So I see this daily. It's a small percentage, probably less than 20, in healthcare that drive 80% of the expense. So there's an opportunity for forward thinkers and organizations that can repurpose those dollars and value that to basically rejigger the way that they offer insurance, not taking anything away, but taking advantage of the fact that for the most part, most employers are over-insuring their population. Most people, 80%, maybe just use that as a place marker, of people do not access their health insurance very much, if at all, during the year. Year over year, for decades, I've seen this. So, but what everybody wants when they go into that new job is they want a super rich insurance package. And that costs a lot of money. And to a large degree, if you believe this 80-20 rule applies to insurance, that means for 80% of the people, you're buying a lot of benefits and giving a lot of money to an insurance company that your employees are never going to access. So there's no value there because you're paying for it, but people aren't using it. So what I find interesting, and I'm constantly looking for ways, or companies' strategies is to, provide those rich benefits while at the same time not only providing them to the 20%, not paying for the 80 that are never going to access them. And so whether it's HRA wraps or pricing transparency or just self-funding in general, pharmacy, negotiating. Always being vigilant and searching out new ideas and new opportunities and new companies that can help any employer, charter schools and others, really get a hold of there. If you're willing to do the work, you could really lower your costs and get a flatter trend line than what we're seeing now, which is it's kind of death by paper cuts with insurance, because you got to provide it to stay competitive in the market, to attract and retain employees. And then you kind of expect a guy like me or a woman like me to show up every year, a couple months before your renewal and say, hey, you're holding your breath. Yeah, costs are going up 10% to 20 now.
Amen.
So what does that mean in an environment where 5 years from now you're going to be paying 50% more, but you're not, correct me if I'm wrong, do you expect the state to increase, what they're paying you to provide all this great education?
That's not the track record.
That's not the track record. So, if you just graph that out, so if we can lower that trend line to something more like, 5% and sometimes under, you're doing a lot of good. And that organization in that area is going to be healthier than somebody who's not taking advantage of that 80-20 rule reality and that is over-insuring their population. Not just money. I would say it this way. If I said, do you raise your hand if you want to give extra money to the insurance industry?
Crickets.
But that's the reality of what a lot of employers are doing.
Do you find that the education sector is more resistant to innovative approaches than perhaps the private sector? So the reason I ask that is because you'll hear about even big companies, I won't mention names, but Fortune 500 companies, and I have friends who work for them, and they'll have $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 deductibles on their insurance, right? So they're paying out of pocket themselves, even executive packages, because the private sector is, I think, sharpened their pencils a lot more readily than perhaps a big school district where, you and I have talked about this, the level of over-insurance is pretty tremendous, and people have $5 copays. Right. Even school administrators or someone in my role would have a $5 copay. Right. It's like, that's a latte. Right. Do you find that educators are more resistant to that idea of, hey, we're going to take this different approach? Or
That's a great question. I would, just guttural reaction to that is it whether it's education or private sector or manufacturing or high tech, it really comes down to leadership.
Okay.
So I wouldn't pick on education so much. I think it could be an easy target, but I wouldn't, in my experience, I think there are all kinds of people in education, yourself included, that are innovators. And so what I've noticed, what is the saying? You're the sum of the five people that your five, who you are is the sum of, the five people you hang out with the most.
Right.
So I think this is what I find interesting. So I think I tend to end up with clients that want to innovate, because if I come in and I start talking about all the ideas and get excited about, hey, I can, the 80-20 rule and how do we go about structuring this to keep that money for you, and they're looking at me with that blank stare and they're like, well, I understand that, Mike, but we kind of short-staffed and this sounds like a lot of work, and I'm not sure that I believe you year over year, and and I might not be here next year anyway, so I don't know that I want to fight this fight. So yeah, a long-winded answer to a short question, but I would say that people that are willing to accept the status quo, or can I get the status quo, which is what you're talking about. You're going to get that 10 to 20% now, year over year. And where does that put you in 5 years, as opposed to if you're willing to innovate, willing to put the work in, you could have something more like 5 years from now, you're maybe 20% instead of 50. That 30% pays for a lot of stuff.
It does.
Yeah, especially in healthcare where we're talking big dollars.
Right.
Which is maybe another reason I like what I do, is because I know that for any organization, providing benefits to employees is going to be 2 or 3 on their list of the most, on the expense ledger.
That's right.
So if I can do something about that, multi-million-dollar expense and cut it by 10 to 30%, and then trend line that out for 5 years, so it's just bigger and bigger and bigger, the savings.
Right.
I get excited about that.
It strikes me as, well, we know that health benefits are very emotional. It's a very emotional area, especially as people get older, especially as people have children, they get married. I remember a conversation I had years ago with the teacher, I think it was, and I said, so imagine if rather than us providing you with health benefits, we gave you $10,000 a year. Choose the number, but. And you could, I think this was before Obamacare, where there's a penalty for not having insurance. Yeah. You could choose to not have insurance. You could choose to, I don't know, we're at a border city. You could go to Mexico for a lot of at least your routine preventative stuff. You'll certainly save money. You can shop around here and see what that $10,000 will buy you. And by the way, I've already found out that $10,000 you could buy here, and you could still put money in your pocket. And they said,
Sure.
nope, it's too emotional. I can't. And it strikes me that stayed with me. That was like 15 years ago or longer, and it strikes me as, the insurance carriers must know that that's part of what goes into organizations' decisions. I mean, you're not going to have an entity just pull the rug out and not offer health insurance to their employees. You lose your competitive advantage. So you're kind of captive to this endless upward spiral, really.
Yeah. Well, the healthcare trend, is right around double digits.
Yeah.
So that's just, healthcare inflation, think of it that way, just the future cost of healthcare with all the innovation and increased costs, and, whether that's a contract or, the cost of providing a new technology, a new drug, a new surgery. You don't have to look very far to look at all the great things that are accessible, and surgeries and drugs that'll, cure hepatitis C.
Right.
90 grand. Cured. Like 95% cure rate. So that's pretty cool. But that's 95 grand.
Yep.
So what I find is one of the bigger problems we have, and I think this is what you're speaking to about with the $10,000 that you get this phantom of $10,000, the what if I could just give this to you, is that you're speaking to kind of the lack of consumerism in this area.
Right.
Which is, once again, Amazon's always the example. I use this example with clients all the time. It's like, let's say you're in the market for a new car, a Honda Accord. You got two dealerships literally across the street from each other. You got this Honda Accord, brand new 2023, all the features, and it's at one dealership for 20 grand. And across the street, you got the same car for 40 grand. Same car, same warranty, same reliability, everything's the same. Which one are you going to buy? Yeah. Nobody buys the $40,000, but because we don't have a line of sight, which the industry is trying to do something about, there was a law passed recently to increase required transparency in pricing so that we know when we're buying a $20,000, Honda Accord versus a 40, hasn't really taken yet because what's missing is the employee incentive.
Right.
It's now you're playing with house money. You're really spending your employer's money or the government's money when you're making that decision. If it were you making that decision, so you might accidentally or purposely buy the $40,000 Honda Accord. But if you knew for sure and it was your money, you would never buy.
No.
But that happens all the time, and that's literally the example and it's in this town and this zip code. This is happening. You get an MRI for $500, you get it for $3,000. Literally, that's the spread. Same MRI, same machine, same result. You could now. Who's going to spend $3,000 when they could get it for $500? And that is along with obesity, along with the drugs, along with a lot of the end of life care we're talking about. If you put all that in there as well, we don't have very little consumerism. That's a big problem because we're spending that money thinking and then asking the question, well, why is this so expensive? Well, if you keep spending more than you need to, you run out of money eventually.
Like ambulance rides.
Ambulance rides, crazy.
I mean, to think that in the wealthiest country in the world, in the largest state, wealthiest state, if California were a global, if it were a country, it would be top 10 in terms of the size of the economy. But see it all the time. Someone falls down, gets injured, and they tell you not to call the ambulance.
Yeah.
And they're 2 miles from the hospital, and they know that it's going to cost $2,000-$3,000.
Yeah. Well, the pivot on or continue down the ambulance road. Yeah. So where's the ambulance taking you? It's taking you to the emergency room. Well, a lot of those, critical. They're life-threatening. And all that we see all the time. Something we really drill down on with clients is employees accessing the emergency room as opposed to like an urgent care setting.
Right. Where
you got 10 times that's cost. But people just gravitate towards the emergency room.
Right.
That's just where they go.
Right.
Because there's no financial incentive to direct them to do otherwise. And to be fair, there's also very little education.
Right.
So it's like kind of the double whammy. There's no incentive and there's very little education. So what do people do? They're concerned about their health. They drive up the freeway and land at Sharp or Scripps or UCSD in the ER. They wait a few hours, $12,000 later versus $200 later in urgent care.
Right.
And why are your premiums going up?
Right.
Yeah, that's part of the equation.
It was eye-opening for me. My dad had cancer, and at the end of his life, I had to have him life-flighted from one city to another. And so you could imagine how much a life flight would cost. So let's say it was an hour flight. It was just a few. I was on the plane with him.
Yeah.
So I don't know, $20,000 for that flight. But the ambulance ride from the airport, and I'm going to say what city it was on. It's Tucson, so shame on you, Tucson. The ambulance ride from the airport in Tucson to the university hospital, which was a 10-minute ride, that was like $8,000.
Yeah.
And I get it, right? The hospital's probably absorbing countless number of clients who take the ambulance and can never pay the bill or settle for pennies on the dollar.
Absolutely.
And my dad had good insurance, and so it was really remarkable and eye-opening. And then not to mention the fact that his widow got the bills and in the end didn't have to pay anything, I don't think, luckily. But you get these bills in the mail and you're not even totally certain if it's really a bill. Sometimes it says this is not a bill, and so what a broken system. I never know from one day to the next if I really owe something if I have any medical bills out there, because you'll go in for something, you'll pay your copay, or sometimes you won't pay the copay and then they'll charge you after. It's just, it's a broken patchwork.
I should qualify this statement. I'm a big fan of, as much as I'm critical of, I'm also a big fan of the insurance industry and the hospital system. Right. I worked at Sharp Healthcare for a number of years and saw that end of the business.
Right.
And, there's hundreds of millions of dollars that are being written off, by every hospital in San Diego and Tucson.
Right.
And so a lot of what we're seeing.
Sorry, Tucson.
Yeah, sorry, Tucson. No, they deserve their criticism, but they do deserve, a little leniency too.
Yeah.
Because it ain't perfect.
No.
But in their defense, a lot of people come in and don't pay, and they got to write it off. And particularly in San Diego with this border, what could you and I be down drinking a cerveza on the beach in Mexico in half an hour?
Yeah.
So these people come across, and they go back, they get their health care, they go back, and little, if anything, is paid in. So that's part of the equation as well, to what you're speaking about, specific to emergency rooms, specific to ambulances, specific to a lot of different areas where we look at the actual cost and say, how could that be tens of thousands of dollars for a 30-minute ride?
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit. We could talk a lot about the healthcare industry, and all I'm going to say is, I can speak from personal experience that the self-funding model that we've used at Albert Einstein, I know that some of your other charter school clients are using, has been transformative. And essentially it means that we take some of the risk off of the plate of the insurance companies before they ever start to see that. And so that's been really a credit. That's really a credit to your willingness to be innovative, and also our board and those conversations of walking people through so that we're not overinsured. We have just the Goldilocks, just enough insurance, right?
Yeah. I like that Goldilocks.
The Goldilocks. Yeah. You think about even car insurance, right? How many of us are way overinsured, right? The average person, I don't want to jinx people, but they're really not getting in a lot of accidents.
Right.
And even sometimes they do, and they don't even report it to the insurance company.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Same thing. I use that example as I'm trying to explain how it relates to healthcare, which you just explained really well. I'm going to steal that, the Goldilocks. Maybe it's just the right amount. But yeah, it's totally the same as, like, why would you have a $250 deductible and pay $100 extra bucks a month on your car insurance premium?
Right.
It's because you just kind of do it. You're not educated. You're not being a consumer, understanding what's the risk of me actually, versus the reduced premium I'll get if I take that higher deductible.
I mean, my mom should have a $2,000 deductible on her car. She never drives.
Right.
But I'm going to have to, Mom, I'm going to check with you. You're probably at $250,
yeah,
right?
He's coming for you,
I'm
Mom.
coming for you, Mom. Let me see your Geico's going to ask you if you can, the lizard or the gecko's going to ask you if they can see your bill. Right. Yeah. But I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your philanthropic work.
Yeah.
And in particular, your mentorship work that you've done at a number of charter schools around connecting professionals, executives with graduating or near graduation high school students, and what started that and kind of where that is now?
Yeah, well, it really started about 10 years ago with someone I consider a dear friend now, Giff Asimos at Helix High School. Shout out, Giff. And he asked me to come into a class he was teaching, a business class, and just kind of talk about my experience. At that point, I was a business owner. And it was a really interesting, cathartic experience because I had around 35, 40 students. I had no idea what I was going to talk about. I was just supposed to come in and talk to a business class and share my experiences. And they started asking me questions, a lot of really good questions about business and how to run a business and what it, because, everybody at some point, I think in their life probably, or most people has a dream of, hey, I'd like to, whether it's a little sidecar business, side hustle, or an actual investment, all in on a business. And I didn't know how much I knew. I all of a sudden had all this information, all this between my ears, and it came out when I was talking to these students. And so a couple of them pursued me afterwards. And I think I've talked to you about this. We talked a little bit before we started the podcast. In another life, I'd probably be a teacher and a coach. I love coaching. I love being coached. Some of the most important people in my life have been coaches, as far as the impact on me. So kind of that pay it forward opportunity with these students as they were hungry for some of the information I had accumulated. And then I started noticing that, one of the things I think I do fairly well, and you do very well, is, I value connecting with people. And that's been a life, career-long thing where I've just found so much intrinsic value, both in my career and just personally, by just like being inquisitive and just wanting to learn about people and how do you do what you do, and who do you know that I might know and that we associate with at the same time and maybe don't know it. So that's really what was born out of. And then I started noticing that was a skill. We'd called it networking, and then we kind of morphed that into connecting. And now we've morphed that in, when I say we, there's other people that I now work with along these lines that are mentoring young people. Now we call it being curious. We're encouraging. So we've kind of, over the last decade, gone from networking to being curious as a real skill that you need to work on. And the reason you need to work on it is, I call it secret sauce. So for young people who may not come from a family or may not have everybody in their life that has been in business or in any professional environment, they don't understand that is, in my mind, the secret sauce to success. It's not your grade point average. It's
Right.
not where you went to school. It's not how many degrees you have. All of that is relevant. But really what's going to define your success is how you connect with people and build your own personal network of people that you can lean on and can lean on you at certain times. So that's a skill. It's not something you just wake up and can do. For some of us, it's harder than for others. But it's like anything else in life. It's something that it's a repetitive skill. It's motor memory.
Right.
If you don't do it, you're not going to be able to do it. And having a daughter that just went through college and paying attention to this, I kept asking her, hey, are they teaching you this? Where's the class? Are you hearing anything about this as a skill that your college is telling you, hey, as you're nearing graduation and you're going to be transitioning into the workforce, how do you go about getting in front of those people that could hire you in your chosen field? How do you do that? You don't do it by just waking up and posting your resume
Right.
on some internet site or sending it into some clearinghouse, or there's a lot of work that needs to go into it. So anyway, once again, as always, long answer to a short question. I'm just extremely passionate about it. I have a group of young people that I stay connected with. They call me, I meet with them, I do continue to do 2 sessions a year where I meet with about 30 to 40 students, high school seniors, and we run you've been to a few of these.
Yeah, I have.
I go and train them up on connecting and how to do it, and then we hold an event where we invite professionals in. Anybody interested in attending, give me a call, find me. I'm with McGriff Insurance Services, Mike Lutosky at McGriff.com. And we're always looking for a diverse community of professionals that are interested in interacting with young people, high school seniors that are about to start their journey into college and into their professional life, and help them out. Could be an accountant, could be a teacher, could be a business person, could be anything, but just anybody who can help a young person start that education, that part of their education, because they're not going to get it in college. They're just not. They're going to graduate, which is what we see, with hopefully not too big, but sometimes a pretty big loan, and they're going to have no idea how to go get that high-paying job that everybody else wants to pay for that college experience, and then launch into successful life of hopefully owning a home or whatever else you want to spend your money on. Just that creating that stability that is so important for everybody.
Yeah, thank you for that and for sharing your contact information. We'll put that in the show notes as well. I can attest to the value of having participated in a few of those, and just being able to talk to high school students who are kind of looking around the corner and wondering what's going to happen in the next era, in the next portion of their lives, and just that experience of being able to self-advocate and speak with an adult, and then they realize that just because you're wearing a tie or nice shoes, you're just like everybody else. I know that every time they interview executives and they ask, what are you looking for in your ideal hires, it's usually good reading, writing, speaking, communication. Right. The soft skills for the most part.
Oh, absolutely.
And the stuff that AI can't do for you.
Right.
Some of the writing, some of the low-level writing, artificial intelligence is already doing for us.
Right.
I just saw an article this morning in the newspaper that a Nobel Prize-winning economist is saying that he's predicting that artificial intelligence will make it possible for us to have 4-day work weeks in the future. I'm assuming that's globally. I think there's some countries that are already doing that. Shout out to France.
Right.
No, sorry, I'm going to get a bunch of hate emails. But it's interesting, though, because the low-level factual stuff, if AI can do that for us, that's great. But it's never going to replace a conversation, reading body language, knowing how to ask questions appropriately, knowing how to self-advocate, asking someone if they can help facilitate a meeting with someone else, right? So those are really invaluable things. I know my daughter harkens back to a personal finance class she took at Helix High School as one of her favorite classes she took. And part of it was, I think she enjoyed the fact that they were actually teaching her real world skills about, how to buy a used car and, looking at the market and market conditions and interest rates and all those pieces. But part of it was learning how to have conversations with folks. And it's a different skill than just making presentations based on content that you've learned in your classes.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that, and I know there's a generation of kids who are really benefiting from that in the future. I got 2 more questions.
Sure.
One is, you were a history major.
Yeah.
Favorite historian or favorite author?
John McCullough. Yeah, so anything he writes, Abe Lincoln, John Adams, George Washington, David McCullough, I'm reading that. Yeah, I would say he's my favorite.
I'm working my way through, and I'm going to blank on the formal name, but the history of the Panama Canal.
Oh.
He wrote that. It's just...
Yeah, I haven't picked that up yet.
It's on my bucket list to travel through the Panama Canal. because my dad would always tell me stories from the Erie Canal. He was from Northwest New York, born in Buffalo, and he was always talking to me about the concept of locks, right, and the idea that you can go up or go downhill, and
Teddy Roosevelt,
just
crazy.
And so I've always had this idea that I'm gonna make it happen. That I'm gonna travel through the Panama Canal. And just whatever, it takes a day or whatever. And I know it's not great scenery; it's just industrial. But yeah. So
well, I have to fit this in here because it's how I talk about the origins. How I ended up as a history major was my parents gave me a book. I still have it at home. When I was probably under 10, I was probably 7 or 8, on Abraham Lincoln. Still my all-time favorite historical figure. I read probably 8 or 9 at least books on Abe Lincoln, and it was just a kind of almost a picture book. It was a 7-year-old book. And what struck me after I went through it, and pictures of him in front of the fire with a piece of coal on a shovel, right, doing his, all those stories you hear, and was that it was a true story. So that has stuck with me through today. It's like I don't read hardly any fiction. Because
I don't either. I don't need to.
I was just like, why would I read a made-up story when these true stories are just fascinating and riveting? And so that's kind of the reason why I'm still totally into history, and that's what I read when I'm reading.
If I could recommend, I've departed from the single track of nonfiction recently. With the Border trilogy, I'm going to blank on the author's name. So Power of the Dog.
I like the title.
Anyway, after this episode, I'm going to get you the author's name. It's also a great listen on Amazon.
Awesome.
Because you and I have a passion for traveling in Mexico as well. You'll like that. But
nice.
I'm with you on the true story aspect, right? Like, we don't need to invent things. The history is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing. So you have the opportunity to design a billboard on the side of the 5 freeway.
Okay.
And people are only going to read it for about 3 seconds as they drive by. So you got to keep it short. I know you and I have a challenge with that.
Yep.
What does that billboard say about Mike Lutosky's message that he wants the next generation to pay attention to?
2 things pop in my head right away. One is I'm kind of fascinated by and live my life in what I, as far as what I value in personal interactions about being curious. So I think one version of that billboard would just be big block letters against a white billboard, be curious. And then that would be it. And for those of you listening, if you haven't picked up Brian Grazer's book, Curious, that's where that started, that evolution from networking to connecting to being curious. His story, I could spend another hour just talking about that book. Amazing.
He's the producer?
The producer, Splash, producer. Apollo 11.
Yeah.
Big crazy hair.
Super curious guy, right? He's got a list of people he meets, a different one every month or something like that.
Yeah, he's still doing it this day. Started out just with, and this back to you students, why you should learn to connect, network, build these soft skills that David was talking about. Just read that book. That's where he started, and that is the reason he gives for why he's achieved the success. Is the guy, by the way, terrible dyslexic.
Yep.
So overcame that by being curious and just constantly made a habit of setting up meetings with people on a weekly basis, still does it to this day, that he finds interesting. Not specifically to benefit him in Hollywood, in that production area, just in general, he's a curious guy and he's inquisitive. And some of the stuff he does is the other thing. So that would be my first billboard. Okay. If I could have 2 billboards.
I'll give you, you earned a second.
Can I get it one?
Yeah,
okay.
Got a second one.
So my second one, I've got I think it's an odd sense of humor. I find humor in things. It needs to be subtle, and it needs to be something not immediately, something that makes you think. Because what I find funny is people have to, what the hell is that? I love that, like that.
Yeah.
So every Christmas, my Christmas gift to my wife, Molly, going on 30 years, is I go upstairs, I'm just in my pajamas or whatever. I go upstairs and I put on an outfit. When she's not looking, she's downstairs with everybody else. And then I come down. And one of the joys in my life is the belly laugh, if I get it right, when I show up in this outfit. So this year I went upstairs and I went movie grade Will Ferrell elf. Movie grade. But I come down, I had the wig and everything. And I come downstairs, full on, yellow tights, green jacket, little cap, Will Ferrell hair. I'll show you a picture. I would love a billboard of me in that outfit. And just people driving just by that. Like, what is that? Who is that guy? And just like them having to do some research to try and find me, maybe a little clue of some kind on the billboard somewhere that would lead them to me, but otherwise they're just like thinking about it when they go to bed. It's like, what in the hell was that about? Those would be my two.
That's a perfect place to wrap for today. Be curious and Will Ferrell elf in yellow tights.
Absolutely. Or surprise your spouse.
Surprise your spouse.
Yeah.
Those are all good sentiments. Thank you so much, Mike,
Thanks,
for
David.
your time hanging out today.
Yeah,
and
this is
it's
great.
been a pleasure, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah. You named it. Tomorrow?
All right. We're on. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you for listening to the Superintendent's Hangout. You can follow me on Twitter at DVS1970. Please be sure to share this show with friends and family on social media and in the real world. Thank you to Brad Bacayal for editing and production assistance, and to Tina Royster for scheduling and logistics. Thanks for hanging out, and have a great day.